Hello, this is Brooks Whittington with halfwheel.com. Today taking a look at the XIKAR Xi1 Perfect Cutter. Now, in 1996, XIKAR introduced the original XI cutter. It's a double guillotine cutter, meaning it has two blades that come together to perform a straight cut. But this was in a unique teardrop-shaped body that was very different than what was available back then and even now. Now, in fact, the design is so unique that XIKAR has a patent on it, and it's become popular enough that the company's added a number of different variants since, including the XI2, the XI3, which use the same basic design but with different materials. The cutter I'm reviewing today is the XI1 Perfect, and what makes this different than the original XI1 is the fact that it has a backplate on the back. And what that means is that because you have this backplate, it was built specifically to purposely limit the amount of the cap that you can cut off at any one time so that you don't damage the cigar or so that the cap doesn't unravel, things of that nature. You get about 1/8 of an inch every time you cut that with this cutter specifically. Now, unlike the original XI1, the XI1 Perfect is also only sold by Florida-based retailer Smoke Inn. There are 7 different finishes for the XI1 Perfect, and all of them are priced at $72.95 each. Now, in terms of physical specifications, the XI1 Perfect is a teardrop design case, as I mentioned before, but that case is made of aluminum, and it contains 2 stainless steel blades. The blades are released via a spring-loaded opening mechanism, as you just saw, which is triggered by this knob here. And you just push down on it, and it opens them up quite aggressively, in fact. The cutter weighs 50 grams exactly and is only 0.25 inches thick. It measures 1 3/4 inches wide when it's closed and 2 3/4 inches wide when it's fully open like so. It is also 3 inches tall from top to bottom. Now, it's capable of cutting a 54 ring gauge cigar fully, although you can obviously cut a little bit larger ring gauge cigar, let's say up to about 60, if you're just cutting a little bit off the cap. Finally, the addition of the backplate means that the amount of cap that can be cut at any one time is limited to about 1/8 of an inch. All right, but enough about all that. Let's cut some cigars. Now, the operation of the XI1 Perfect is really, really simple, almost idiot-proof, in fact. And it comes down to the idea of being able to pick this thing up from wherever you have it. And you put the pointed in here in the palm of your hand. It's well designed to go right in the palm of your hand with the blades right near your fingers as they should be. You pull down on this knob, push down on this knob, and it opens up the blades automatically and aggressively. And then you put the cap of your cigar that you're using into the opening there, and you push it against that back plate that's part of the cigar cutter. Now, you don't want to push it too hard against that back plate because you might bust the cap before you actually cut the cigar. But you want to push it against there firmly because you want to get as much as you can off of the cap of the cigar. So you push it firmly, and then you are going to push the blades closed on the cap of that cigar. You don't want to wimp out when you go into pushing. Make it a nice, firm, even movement. And when you do that, you can see that cuts nice and clean. The cool thing about this is the fact that because you have that back plate, one of the cool things is the fact that you have the remnants that are stuck inside the opening there. And so instead of being, going everywhere, having to put them in your hand or whatever, you have them stuck right there. And to get them out, you just beat it against the ashtray or table or outside or whatever, wherever you have it. Now, as with any cutter that I've reviewed, you have good things and bad things that I like and didn't necessarily like about the cutter. And the good things start with the idea that it just works. This cutter, every time you pick it up, you open it up, you put the cap in there, you close the blades. The vast majority of the time, you're going to get a very clean and very consistent cut. It works the way it should, and that's not something that happens as often as you might think with cigar cutters. Believe me, I know. If you use this cutter to cut a cigar, the vast majority of the time you're going to get a very nice, very even cut. It's built very, very well, and it feels great in your hand. It's designed to feel great in your hand, and I got to be honest, I love that opening and closing noise. It's a little aggressive, but it just feels like something substantial. It feels and sounds like something that is going to last. And I just could do this all day long. The wife got kind of annoyed with me, in fact, because of how much I was doing it when I was reviewing it at home. She was, it just, to me, it's a very soothing sound, something that I could do a lot, as you could see, and never get tired of it. It just feels great. It looks great. It's easy to use, and really, that really shouldn't be something that is unusual, but it is. Now, there's also the fact that, as I mentioned before, the tobacco remnants get stuck in between the backplate and the blades. That's a good thing and a bad thing. We'll get to in a second, but it's a good thing because you can actually take those remnants and put them wherever you want to put them. You can, smack them down into a ashtray or whatever it is that where you want to put them, and so it's very cool to be able to know that when you take the when you cut the cigar, that you don't have to worry about pieces going everywhere. But of course, when you have those remnants stuck inside of that opening, it can also be a bad thing because you have to fish them out. Now, most of the time, knocking it against a table or something will get rid of all of them, but once in a while you have to pick them out, or the little piece gets stuck in there, and it's an annoying process for sure. However, the largest issue that I have with this cutter refers, to the back plate. And the issue is that, for me, one of the things that I love seeing in a normal double guillotine cutter is, it's twofold. Number one, you can see how much of that cap that you are cutting off at all times, very, very easily. And number two, you can take off as much or as little of the cap as you want at pretty much any time. If I wanted to go down here and cut this much off, then I could do that. I don't normally have to, but for the most part, if I wanted to, I could. If I wanted to cut just a little bit off, I could do that as well. And the point behind having that control is that it gives you so many more options when it comes to how you are smoking your cigar. The problem with the XI1 Perfect is the fact that you can only take off about a 1/8 of an inch at a time, give or take, with this cutter. So if you wanted to, cut a torpedo, for example, or cut something with a pointed cap of some sort, it's going to take you 2-3 times to actually get to the point where you can actually draw through that cigar well. And that's an annoying process. Now, it's the same with any cutter that has a backplate, of course. But the fact is that you can't cut as much as you want to or need to sometimes with a cutter with a backplate with only one cut. In addition, that backplate does not allow you to see how much of that cigar cap you're taking off. You don't have the visibility. You don't have the control. You really don't have as as many options as you would with the cutter when it comes that does not have the backplate. And that's really the bottom line in that regard. Now, one other thing that I noticed as I was carrying this thing around is the fact that this has some chipping on the edges here. Interestingly, nothing on the back, despite the fact that I was carrying around with my keys in my pocket quite a bit of time. But the edges have some obvious signs of wear on them. So something to be aware of. I've only used this for about a month. So something to be aware of, that those, that chipping is occurring already. And so in the end, after all of that, can I recommend the XIKAR XI1 Perfect Cutter? The answer is yes, 100% I can. And the reason is simple, because this does exactly what a cutter should do. It cuts cigars cleanly, it cuts them consistently, and it's very, very easy to use. You pick up the cigar, you put it in, you close the handle, and you're done. Simple. It feels great in your hand. It's not too heavy. And it really, really, really works the way that it should. Not exactly a given these days when it comes to cigar cutters. There are people who love this backplate. There are people who swear by the backplate. As I mentioned before, I'm not a big fan of it, but it certainly does the job it's supposed to do. And I could cut cigars with this all day long and never really be all that bothered by it, except for the lack of visibility. And even the cigar cutter works so well that I would get over it pretty quickly. So if you're looking for its new double guillotine cutter, you could do a lot worse than the XIKAR and probably not much better. So that's my opinion. If you need to have more news and reviews, go to halfwheel.com.